camp today. It was at Levi's Stadium in their SAP practice facility. I'm going to be breaking it all down. How did scrimmage go? How did Trey Lance look? How did the defense look? All after this.
Let's go get him. Let's go get him today, man. Let's go. Hey, dominate on three. 1, 2, 3. Dominate.
What's going on, everybody? Thank you guys all for tuning in. I am back, finally home. I was a half hour late then compared to yesterday, but day 2 of training camp is here. The 49ers finished training camp practice a little later than yesterday, but it was nonetheless an eventful day. Before I continue, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Be sure to hit that like button. I'm going to be here every single day after training camp, breaking it down, telling you guys what I saw and how training camp practice went. Today, I'm going to go with a little bit of a different format. I'm going to start with how 11 on 11s went. So the 49ers had 2 11 on 11 sessions today. The first session was a little shaky, I'll say, and the second session had its ups and downs as well. 2 different sessions. I'll break down who stood out, the general theme, how the quarterbacks did, and everything. So that's what I'll start with. Then I'll move on to how the quarterbacks played. Any interesting news, such as Ark Armstead. He was not at practice today. Kevin Givens took all the first team snaps, and anything else that we didn't cover yesterday. But let's start with the most important part of the day, 11 on 11s. So looking at the first session, there were a ton of handoffs to begin. But starting off, I'm just going to list exactly how practice went from top to bottom. The first pass of the day was by Brock Purdy, and it was an interception. Brock Purdy threw his first interception and the 49ers' first quarterback interception of the day. It was to Kadar Holman. It was on the right sideline, about 20 yards out. Brock Purdy was trying to hit a player on the sideline. The ball was in the air for a little bit, and it's some part of what I said yesterday. Brock Purdy, his arm strength really, you can definitely tell that his arm strength isn't NFL caliber, at least right now. It does take a while for the ball to get there, even when he's throwing his hardest. And we'll get to Brock Purdy in a little bit as well. It was a veteran day for Ark Armstead. That's why he wasn't in practice, for those wondering. Thank you for pointing out, Kali. Additionally, Trent Williams, same thing. He was excused today. Colton McKivitz was the starter at left tackle. But Brock Purdy started off practice with the interception. On that play, defensive tackle, undrafted free agent Kevin Atkins recorded a pressure. On the second play, a second passing play, that is, Lance got sacked, and he threw a pass to Brandon Ayuk. Charvarius Ward was there. It was a pass breakup, Lance's first incompletion of the day. Then came Nate Sudfeld on the next passing play. He made a 30-yard completion to Brandon Ayuk, who was guarded by Amory Thomas in soft coverage. Ayuk ran about a 30-yard post and then was matched up with George Odom and made a contested catch with Odom in coverage. And guys, one other thing. Be sure to drop all of your questions in the chat. I will be going through every single question after breaking down exactly how 11 on 11s went, just as I am right now. I'll tell you guys how they went. I'll tell you guys statistics once I'm done. But be sure to drop your questions and tune in. So, like I said, one of the better passes of the day came on the third pass of the day from a quarterback. Nate Sudfeld hitting Brandon Ayuk, who made a 30-yard contested catch over George Odom, the backup safety. Brandon Ayuk obviously was running with the 2s for some time today, alongside the 1s. Receivers mix in and out with the 2s and 1s. Brandon Ayuk, that was a big catch by him. Then first team came back on. Lance and Brandon Ayuk tried to connect. It was an out route to the left sideline, but Charvarius Ward was in coverage, incompletion. Then Lance tried to hit Jawan Jennings, but this was his most inaccurate pass of the day. On a 5-yard slant in, Lance absolutely just missed Jennings. He threw the pass behind him, probably about 5 yards behind Jawan Jennings. Worst pass of the day by Lance. And it was a rough start. So Lance essentially 0 for 3 on his first 3 passes, including a sack. Then on the next play, Nick Bosa beat Colton McKivitz, the left tackle, recorded a sack there as well. And guys, when I'm talking sack, plays normally extend because, guys, pads are not on. So sack just means the defensive lineman got to the quarterback and either tapped him or gave up on the play. And then they also, the quarterback just continues the play after that. So that was one of the plays. Nick Bosa beat McKivitz, and you're starting to sense a theme. Defensive line dominated today. I'll explain later why that's not too big of a concern for the offensive line, but defensive line definitely dominated today. A ton of pressures, a ton of sacks. On the next play, Nate Sudfeld was in. He threw an incompletion. Drake Jackson recorded a pressure on right tackle Justin Skule, and Jason Poe was also pressured as well on the play. He was at left guard. On the next passing play, Brock Purdy came in. He avoided a sack. It was a nice play by Purdy. Avoided a sack, threw a 5-yard check down. Then on the next play, Brock Purdy hit Juwan Jennings on a 20-yard out route, one of Purdy's better passes on the day. First team offense then comes out towards the end of session number 1 for scrimmages. Lance had a nice play. Lance was being pressured, and the defensive linemen were running to the sideline. Lance looking downfield, couldn't find anybody, and so he takes off, and he avoids the defense, outruns the entire defense for a 30-yard rush. That was one of Lance's better plays of the day, utilizing his legs. He was mainly in the pocket today, tried to be a pocket passer today, but that was his best rushing play of the day. On the next play, Lance started to get back into the groove. He found George Kittle, zipped it in. It was a throw over the middle going towards the right sideline. Jimmy Ward was charging in to try and deflect the pass off Kittle. Lance, using that arm strength, zipped it into Kittle, ended up being 40 yards, 20 after the catch. On the next play, Lance hit Ray McLeod on a 7-yard out route, and that was Lance's end to session number 1. The last 2 plays on session number 1, Nate Sudfeld tried to throw a pass to Juwan Jennings. However, it was broken up. Great play by the defense. I forget who the cornerback was in coverage. Great pass breakup there. And Segun Olabi, the rookie linebacker, ended up with an interception. That was Sudfeld's only interception of the day. Then on the last play of session number 1, I believe the quarterback was Sudfeld. I will check my notes later, but he hit Trey Sermon in the flat. So guys, to end session 1, Nate Sudfeld ended the day with the best completion, Brock Purdy actually ended the day with the best completion percentage after session 1. He had 3 completions on 4 passes. Sudfeld had 2 completions on 4 passes with an interception, and Lance had 2 completions on 5 passes. A bit of a rougher day compared to yesterday when Lance completed 9 of 11 passes, but Lance did not. He struggled a little bit, but really, to me, it wasn't necessarily Lance struggling as much more as the defense just playing really, really well. Charvarius Ward looked really good in that first session. He recorded that PBU, and the defensive line was also just attacking in that first session. Let's move on to the second session. Trey Lance started obviously with the ones. Had a 20-yard pass to Brandon Ayuk. It was nice because Lance was under pressure again, extended plays, rolled to his left, and hit Ayuk crossbody throw with Charvarius Ward in coverage. Ward had good coverage, and as the play extended, Ayuk freed up and caught a pass rolling towards Lance's left. So a good 20-yard play by Trey Lance there. On the next play, Trey Lance hit Juwan Jennings for 15 yards over the middle. Nick Bosa and Kevin Givens both recorded a pressure on that play. Then came in the second unit after a couple of running plays. Nate Sudfeld came in, and he hit JaMychal Hasty on a little 5-yard angle route out of the backfield to start off Nate Sudfeld's second session. Then he found Marcus Johnson on a 7-yard slant route. Tight coverage by Ambry Thomas. Good catch by Marcus Johnson to keep control, and that was a completion by Nate Sudfeld. Then Brock Purdy came in. He had a 6-yard out route to Keyshawn Johnson, then a 45-yard touchdown to Danny Gray, who blew by the third-team defense. Robert Nikomdiche and Drake Jackson both recorded a sack. Purdy threw the 45-yard bomb in the air. However, the ball was underthrown. that's what part of the Purdy arm strength stuff that I was talking about earlier. Purdy did underthrow that pass. However, Danny Gray was just way behind the defense to the point where it didn't really matter. He ended up recording a touchdown on that play. After that, the first team came back in. Lance found George Kittle over the middle, 13-yard pass. Then Lance tried to connect with Brandon Ayuk on a 35-yard pass to the left sideline. Ayuk made a good play on the ball originally, but as Ayuk was coming down, Mosley did a good job pinning Ayuk outside, out of bounds, and also hit the ball away while Ayuk was coming down. That was an incompletion and a PBU by Mosley. Bosa recorded a pressure on left tackle Colton McKivitz on the play as well. Then Nate Sudfeld came in. He hit Jordan Matthews on a 23-yard pass to the right sideline before finding Keyshawn Johnson for a 3-yarder, and that was essentially his reps. He had those two completions, and Sudfeld had the strongest day of the quarterbacks. More on him in a minute. Lance then came back in with the first team, found Ray McLeod for what could have been a 17-yard pass, but a great play by Talanoa Hufanga, who raced in and recorded a pass breakup on the play, deflecting the pass away from Ray McLeod, turning into an incompletion. Then came Lance's probably worst play of the day. He threw an interception to Jimmy Ward. Brandon Ayuk was probably 10 yards behind in the second part of the secondary, but Lance completely missed him there, just threw it straight to Jimmy Ward on a bullet pass. It was about 20 yards downfield, and that was Lance's only interception of the day. Lance then tried to hit Jawan Jennings on a beautifully thrown ball on the right sideline. Jawan Jennings couldn't corral it. Travarius Ward was there, and he knocked it out of Jennings' hands. Incompletion there. However, if that's Deebo Samuel, that probably is getting caught with how Deebo Samuel attacks at the launch point. Something to notice, Jawan Jennings was actually getting a lot of action outside. That is something important to recognize. Deebo Samuel normally gets those routes, but Jawan Jennings was getting a lot of outside action today. Then came Nate Sudfeld back in. He connected with Jawan Jennings on an 11-yard out route and then connected with Jordan Mason on a 10-yard comeback route. Mason ran the route crisply and then was shifty, avoided the defense, and ran his way down the sideline for a nice gain. Then Brock Purdy came in and threw a 45-yard, he got sacked first by Robin Nikondiche, rolled to his right, threw a 45-yard pass, but that pass was in the air for an extremely long time. Taylor Hawkins ended up intercepting the pass, Purdy's second interception of the day, once again attributing to that arm strength issue with Brock Purdy that I mentioned yesterday. Purdy had a pretty solid day, but ended up throwing 2 interceptions, Taylor Hawkins catching the second one. Purdy then rebounded with a 6-yard pass to Tyreen Davis-Price near the flat, and then came in the first team with Trey Lance. Trey Lance then tried to connect with Danny Gray on a pass 50 yards down the field. However, Charvarius Ward was step in step. Ward had amazing coverage on the play, was even ahead of Gray, which is something that could be noted about Ward's speed. Was ahead of Gray even at times in the play. Incomplete pass. Then Lance found Brandon Ayuk on a 20-yarder, a beautiful catch by Brandon Ayuk, made an acrobatic catch, leaped up, kept his feet. It was on the right sideline. He leaped up, made the catch, kept both feet in the air, or both feet in bounds before going out. Darqueze Dennard was in coverage on the play. And then to end the day, Nate Sudfeld on a play action pass hit Tanner Hudson, the tight end, for a 4-yard gain. So overall, looking at it, there were a lot of plays. Trey Lance didn't have the strongest of days. From what I recorded, he was 6 of 14 passing on the day, while Nate Sudfeld ended, I believe, 9 of 11 on the day, and Brock Purdy ended 6 of 8 on the day. So Nate Sudfeld, 9 of 11, had the strongest day. Purdy, 6 of 8, pretty strong day as well from him with 2 interceptions, while Trey Lance ended 6 of 14. So that was the overall quarterback battle. But as I said, here's something that you need to remember. First of all, the offensive line is without pads and is without Trent Williams and Mike McGlinchey, their 2 best players. So the offensive line did struggle a little bit today. But again, you got to wait till pads come on for that to really matter, that trenches battle between the offense and the defense. Additionally, Jawan Jennings was the receiver opposite of Brandon Ayuk on certain plays, whereas that can be Deebo Samuel. That is something important to note as well in the receiver battle and for the connection. That's also why hopefully Deebo Samuel can get on the field more so that we can see that connection and that they can grow the connection before the season starts. But overall, defense had a stronger day. If we're talking about one standout of the day, the best player was by far Charvarius Ward. He was the best player on the field, and Emmanuel Moseley could make the argument that he was the second best player on the field on Thursday. But I'll get to your questions now, and then I'll continue with the kind of the recap of day 2 of training camp. So starting off, James asks, how was Jason Poe? If I'm being honest, Jason Poe, first of all, I said it yesterday, he's the smallest guy on the field on the offensive line. He looks extremely small compared to the other offensive linemen. That's why I don't know if he'll make the roster. He was not taking snaps at center too. He was taking snaps at guard, and he looked a little overwhelmed today. I'm gonna wait and see when pads come on, because that's when his strength will truly really be tested, and see if he can really keep up. But he did look overwhelmed today, gave up a couple of pressures, and so that is how Jason Poe looked. Second question comes from Zach. Is Zach Greer amazing? Unfortunately, no. But James then comes back with another question. Do you anticipate us playing a lot more press man? Combining with a fast defensive line could be lethal. Watching so much soft zone last year was rough. Now, this is interesting because I've seen the 49ers play some soft coverage in the first 2 days, but I've also seen them play press man. It's mainly with the later teams, with the second and third team, that you see him play a little more softer. But I did see good coverage, good press man coverage from Ward and from Moseley at times today. So I'm very interested to see if this happens or not, because I think they brought in corners that can cover, and press man idolizes that coverage ability from cornerbacks as well. Zach asks, the Trey Lance to Brandon Ayuk connection seems to be in full effect. Thinks Danny Gray makes an impact soon. Here's what I'll say. And guys, don't immediately just clip this and say something. Brandon Ayuk has looked good, but not great in practice. At times, he's looked overwhelmed. I'll be honest. Brandon Ayuk, when matched up against Charvarius Ward, hasn't necessarily been the Brandon Ayuk that we expect. Against any other cornerback, Brandon Ayuk has been good. But against Ward or against Moseley, Brandon Ayuk has looked like an average, not average, but looked like a normal receiver rather than the Brandon Ayuk we've seen. He's had passes batted down from the contested part. Ooh, I do not know why messages are getting deleted about that. But talking real quick about Brandon Ayuk, he's had passes batted down. When matched up against Ward, he hasn't necessarily had a high success rate either. I'm not exactly sure. But Brandon Ayuk right now, he looks like the part of a number 2 receiver. Let's see if he can elevate himself even more when pads come on and when he can truly try and be more physical with the cornerbacks that he's going up against. Brandon Ayuk looking good, but I hope he looks a little better going into the regular season. All right. So Mike Silver and Colin Coward were correct about Trey Lance's accuracy. Now, accuracy and incompletion rate are 2 different things, because I thought Trey Lance didn't look too bad today. He had 3 passes today that were deep balls or intermediate balls that were incompletions, but that could have been completed. It's just the defense made an amazing play. First, the first one that I'm talking about is, let me go find it. The first one that I'm talking about was the Brandon Ayuk play to Emmanuel Moseley. It was a 35-yard pass. It was right on the money. It's just Ayuk couldn't corral it as he came down because of the coverage by Moseley, and Moseley batted it down. That's a PBU there. The second one was the 40-yarder to Jawan Jennings. It was in Jennings' hand, but he couldn't corral it again. Charvarius Ward made a good play on the ball, knocked it out. I think those 2 plays, Lance's accuracy was right on the money. It's just it wasn't necessarily – it just the defense just made a good play on it. And so to me, I don't necessarily think Lance's accuracy is that big of a concern right now, especially we've seen how Lance has thrown. We saw Lance throw yesterday. He was pretty accurate yesterday. And now when he's fully stretching the field, there are some ups and downs. I'm not too worried right now. I'm just going to wait to see how does the entirety of training camp kind of boil over. What does the offensive and defensive battle look like 11-11 if they're not pads? Do they actually go 100%? So they essentially go at it. It's just they don't have any pads on. So they're trying to rush, they're trying to use their strength. But it is hard, right? Because I think when there are no pads on and when it's 11-11, the defense has 100% advantage. I don't think the offensive line can go 100% without their pads because they can't utilize their strength. I think the defensive line clearly has an advantage, and that's important to know. Am I missing something? What's up with Mo Hurst? Is he still on the team? Haven't heard his name in any context in how long. Mo Hurst is on the team, and Mo Hurst actually was seeing some reps today. He's number 96, and let me see what I wrote down. Yeah, Mo Hurst was the second team defensive tackle today. So Kevin Givens was the second team defensive tackle. It was him and Hurst yesterday as the second teamers. But Kevin Givens was upgraded to first team today with Armstead taking the day off. And so it was Hyder and Mo Hurst as the second team defensive tackles today. He is still on the team. He is getting reps as the second team guy over there. It'll be interesting to see if he makes the team. There are a ton of names. Guys that definitely can compete might not be on this team come regular season time. So Mo Hurst definitely on the team. He is in there. He's in the competition. We'll see how he fares. And guys, one other thing about the offensive line and the defensive line battles. The defensive line second team can be some NFL teams' first team defensive line. It's that strong. While as the offensive line second team isn't necessarily as strong. They have lack of NFL experience. They aren't necessarily as coordinated. And so remember, keep that in mind as well, because you have guys on that second team like Drake Jackson who are athletic freaks going up against guys like Justin Skule coming off a torn ACL, guys like Sam Schluter, a guy who has never played an NFL snap before. So that is another thing to mention about the offensive defensive line. The offensive line right now, obviously the first team itself is somewhat questionable, but the second team is just inexperienced. So that is another thing to mention on top of how the defense already gets an advantage when pads aren't on. Niner by Nature, one of the hype guys in the chat says, I'm hearing our defense can be special. Front seven bloodhounds with no fly zone secondary. I can't wait. And the biggest thing about this entire team, the secondary. Last year, the secondary, it wasn't too big of an issue, but it wasn't a strength for the 49ers necessarily. This year, you can't test either of the top two corners on this team. I tweeted it out. Charvarius Ward and Emmanuel Moseley are locked down. They're not allowing many completions this year. I thought Moseley was one of the most underrated 49ers on the team last year. Allowed a sub 60% completion percentage, was allowing one of the lowest passer ratings in the NFL, one of the more underrated guys. Allowed a 72 passer rating last year. He is a guy who can be a lockdown cornerback number 2, high-end cornerback number 2, and Ward so far has just shown he's a cornerback number 1 for the 49ers. This defense is definitely something scary. It's going to be very interesting to see how this defense comes together when the 53-man roster is finalized. Was Trey Lance moving? So Trey Lance had that 130-yard rush that I mentioned. If you guys missed any part of my 11-on-11 breakdown, go back to the beginning of this video. I broke down every single play, every single passing play of 11-on-11s. Trey Lance moved. He was moving well. And so you see it in team drills, positional drills. The quarterback coaches have Lance moving a lot, have all the quarterbacks really moving a lot with their feet, rolling out, standing in the pocket, all different type of things. Lance was definitely trying to pass today. It's not like, obviously, without pads, you don't necessarily want to run as much. So Lance was definitely in the pocket. He was moving well today. He had the 130-yard rush, and he also made a couple of plays while rolling to either side. So that is something to know. James asks, what about Rayer McLeod? Haven't heard much from him. How did Womack look in the slot? I think Raven McLeod is honestly poised for a bigger role than people expect in 2022. He was a guy who flashed in minicamp and flashed in OTAs, and now in training camp, he's getting some serious run. He's one of the bigger deep threats on the team alongside Danny Gray, at least right now in training camp with Debo Samuel out. They've been running some deeper routes. And then Ray McLeod has also been a checkdown machine. He's caught a lot of checkdowns where the 49ers just allow him to utilize his legs after the play. I think that he is poised for a big role alongside Juwan Jennings this year. And then how did Womack look in the slot? Womack continued to play with the second team defense. Remember, Kyle Shanahan, he loves to make rookies, he loves to make young guys work for it. So he's not necessarily pushing. He's not necessarily giving Womack the first team reps. So Darqueze Dennard started again in the slot and was seen talking with the first team guys. Womack was with the second team today again. Sermon versus TDP battle. I think this battle is a real battle. I think honestly, right now, Trey Sermon might be winning it. Both of these guys got some serious run time today. I actually really liked what I saw from Trey Sermon today in the way that he was moving. He was cutting very nice, whereas another running back that I'll get to later was not really a guy that moved very well today. Sermon was cutting nice. He looks slimmer. He looks in shape, whereas he wasn't necessarily as in shape last offseason. Remember when the 49ers did have questions about him. TDP is interesting. He's a rookie. I think he's got the talent. It's just how quick can he get accustomed to the system? How quick do the 49er coaches trust him? I think these two guys are primed for some roles in that 49er 49er running back rotation in 2022. Both of these guys definitely. Sermon especially is a guy who I'm keeping my eye on for the remainder of training camp. How is Hufanga processing? I wanted someone to ask this because Talanoa Hufanga has looked good. It's crazy because a lot of people, myself included, really wanted Jaquiski Tart back. I think Tart's a good player, but Hufanga has looked good. Guys, something about Hufanga. He is the first guy on the field every single day, and that was the case last year as well. He came out 45 minutes before practice started today at 9:45, or it was 9:40. He came out, first player out there. He was also one of the last players to leave the field. He was working the jugs machine after practice, and his mental game is there. He was a vocal leader yesterday, helping out Leon O'Neal. I saw in certain drills, and he also was a guy who, like, not only with the vocal and not only with the mental kind of part, he showcased his skill set today. He broke up a pass intended for Ray McLeod, a 17-yard pass from Trey Lance, and when Lance's passes, it has that zip on it. So Hufanga had some nice closing speed today. Obviously, the speed isn't necessarily the biggest thing with Hufanga. I didn't see him run much single high today, which is the look the 49ers could debut this year. I think he's going to be more relegated to a closer role or in a cover two role, but we'll see what Hufanga does throughout the entirety of training camp. He's looked good so far. He's one of my bright spots. All right, going through some of these questions. How is Jordan Mason looking? Jordan Mason's an interesting guy. He's an NFL-ready player, at least in my opinion. Jordan Mason is looking good. He is a big guy. He moves really well for his size, and he's strong and physical. You can see it when the 49ers are doing when they were running the football in the drills, where some other running backs, Jeff Wilson Jr. Specifically, were struggling a little bit. Jordan Mason is running with that. He's just running through, accelerates well, has good speed, and he actually caught a pass today as well, a 10-yard or like an 8-yard comeback route. A good catch by Jordan Mason. He's a guy who could potentially make this roster and be a part of this running back rotation in 2021. Rohan, how did Charles Omenihu look today? Omenihu was good. I'll be honest. Omenihu was good. He got first team reps. He got some first team reps in pass rushing situations in the scrimmage part of today. He was out there. Ebucom was out there as well. Omenihu did line up on the inside for some of the reps. Omenihu also lined up on the outside for some of the reps. He's a guy who I think can be that flexible player, play that Artiki role in 2022. He looked pretty solid, defensive line dominated. I'm not going to look too much into it until pads come on and when players truly can showcase their entire skill set. But Omenihu and the rest of the defensive line is looking good. Hudson looks small, but I saw him working with the tight ends. When I saw him, I thought he was a wide receiver. Now, Hudson is working with the tight ends. Hudson actually did have a catch today as well. He caught I will check it. Uh, he got the last pass of the day, a 4-yard catch from Nate Sudfeld, and he had a couple of catches yesterday. I'll talk about the tight ends in a little bit. They didn't get much run today in scrimmages. It was mainly the wide receivers, which was a positive because that means you're stretching the field more. Tight ends got a bunch of run yesterday. Hudson was one of the guys with a couple of catches yesterday, and he got a catch today as well. Who wins out of Brunskill and Brendel at center? I think this is the battle that the 49ers definitely have to think about for the entirety of training camp. Both of them are getting first team snaps. That's important to note. Brunskill got first team snaps kind of during the second half of the practice, and Brendel got first team snaps. He started at center during scrimmaging, and then he also ended the day at center. So this is a battle that the 49ers are going to closely monitor. It seems like the Burford-Moore tandem is going to compete at right guard. Moore didn't get reps at right guard today. He got reps at tackle mainly, but Burford got all the first-team reps, that is, at right guard. We'll see if that changes as the weeks prolong, but right now it seems like Brendel is the guy at center, although it wouldn't surprise me if Brunskill overlaps him over the next 2 weeks. But remember, Jake Brendel and Trey Lance have that connection, right? They've worked together for the past year because Brendel was the second-team center last year while Trey Lance was the second-team quarterback. They worked together all offseason, and Daniel Brunskill did fumble one snap today, so that is important to note as well. How was Leon O'Neal? O'Neal was all right, not too much today. The coaches were talking to him a lot, trying to help coach him out. There's not too much from Leon O'Neal. He didn't get much action, and he didn't get much thrown to him either when he was on the field. He's working in the third-team safeties behind George Odom and Tarvarius Moore. He's working with Dante Johnson as the strong safety with the third team, so he doesn't necessarily get as much action. We'll see if he as it comes along, but right now, I don't know if O'Neal makes this roster. I think he probably is a long shot. He's probably the sixth safety behind Dante Johnson as well. Although we'll see. There's still a lot of training camp to go. O'Neal, if he can flash with the coaches, he might bump up on the depth chart. 49ers normally carry 4 safeties. All right, keep going. Keep going with these questions, guys. I will be getting to every single one of these before I get out of here. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. And also, be sure to subscribe. Be sure to subscribe because a lot of content is going to be coming out over the next couple of weeks. Appreciate all of you guys. And let's continue with these questions. 49er Minded said, I'm glad to hear that Ward and Mosley are challenging Ayuk. I think Ayuk will come around, though. I believe so, too. It's the first 2 days of training camp, first 2 days of pads, and these guys haven't necessarily worked with each other that much, right? Ayuk and Lance have been working together, but remember, you're going against a live defense for the first time now. And so these are some 2 top-tier guys. Ayuk just has to get comfortable, get his confidence in, and he'll be fine. The 49ers coaching staff has spoken highly of him. I think he'll be there. It's just he's struggled a little bit over the first 2 days when specifically being guarded against these guys. Defense always dominates early in camp every year. I agree. That's just because they are the more favorite team. It's regardless of how talented the team is, they're the more favorite team in camp early without pads just because they have the upper hand there. D-line is super deep. That's true. There are 3 D-line teams that are strong enough to compete for the 53-man spot. The 49ers rotated a bunch with that defensive line. You might even see it every single play that they're rotating with the defensive line. But they had a ton of guys out there. A guy who I haven't even mentioned yet, Jordan Willis, was getting some high snaps with the first team and with the early second team as well in pass rushing situations today. So that is another thing there. Barry a Baller, shout out to him. He asked, what's up with Deommodore Lenoir? How did he look out there? I'll be honest, Deommodore Lenoir is actually looking fine. I thought he'd be a little rougher, but he hasn't necessarily been picked on as much because he's one of the better guys in the second and third team with the cornerbacks. He's an outside cornerback only. He hasn't been played in the slot at all during training camp, but he's looked good. He's a press corner. He's been playing a good amount of press. Again, it's going against fifth, sixth, and seventh string wide receivers at times, so it's not necessarily the competition. Not necessarily is there in those back teams, but he's looked fine out there, better than I expected. Emiliano says Lance is not going to be a robot with laser-like precision, but at least he's attempting those type of throws and the defense gets paid too. I agree with this. Yesterday, we didn't see these passes. The 49ers preferred an install with a bunch of short passes. Today was the first day, I'm telling you, the first day where we've seen deep passes. So I'm totally fine with Lance missing a couple of throws, with Sudfeld and with Purdy missing a couple of those deep throws, because they're finally just getting into the groove of it. They necessarily haven't practiced these throws. It's not that practice, but they haven't played against a live defense and attempted these throws before. So, you got to get it out of the way early, see what works, see what doesn't work, and then practice on it. So I'm definitely glad that they're throwing a lot more deep now. And yeah, Lance, I think, will look good and will rebound just based on what I've seen early on. Are we going to see Juice get more targets this year with Lance's QB1? This is a very interesting question because I saw today after the first session of scrimmaging, players go back into team drills. Kyle Juszczyk and George Kittle were working on the side with Trey Lance and Nate Sudfeld. They were getting specific reps and they were working with coaches, those four together. I don't know if that's a sign. It likely isn't. But, Kyle Juszczyk is getting reps with Trey Lance, and that's important to note. He might be getting some more snaps this year because we have a more pass-prolific offense with a coach in Anthony Lynn who likes getting action out of that backfield. So he could be a guy who might get some more extra action this year. But, again, I don't know. There are a lot of hands that are like a lot of hungry stomachs, right, on this offense because we've got 5 good receivers that could potentially compete for targets, as well as guys like Juszczyk, Kittle, and on and on and on. 49er Minded says they should limit reps for Ward and Mosley. They were limited. Yesterday especially, they didn't play that much. Today, when they played, they got a lot more targeted than they were yesterday, and they just showed up to the challenge. I hope they don't limit it. I really enjoy watching them play because they're really talented. But yeah, it's not like they're playing too much. It's more the second and third team. That's where a ton of these completions are coming in. But they played really well when they were playing. Jesse asked, did our O-line look trash? I wouldn't say trash, right? Because again, like I said, this is the second team O-line, the third team O-line going against this defense is already an overwhelming presence. Put that on top of no pads. So it's taking everything with a grain of salt. It's just the defensive line definitely looked better today without the pads on. How did Elijah Mitchell look? I keep hearing TDP is looking good. Elijah Mitchell was looking fine. I think Elijah Mitchell is the number 1 running back on this team as of now. One thing that I saw yesterday, Elijah Mitchell got 2 catches out of the flat. He didn't get a single catch today, but he got 2 catches out of the flat yesterday. He could be in position to potentially win a role like the third down running back if his usage scales down as if his usage scales down as a running back. He could be looked as more of a receiver. 19 catches last year, 137 yards on 20 targets. An efficient receiver last year. He could be that guy this year if his usage gets scaled down and if Anthony Lynn thinks he'll win that role. But he's looked fine so far. Again, don't judge running backs too much. Don't judge offensive linemen, defensive linemen. But he's been looking good alongside TDP a little bit, as well as Trey Sermon. Grant kept hyping Price, talking down Sermon a bit. Yeah, I mean, Price's acceleration is definitely there, and the physicality is there. I thought Sermon looked fine. I honestly thought he looked a little better. The one thing that we have to see is the vision. How does the vision work for Trey Sermon? But his cutting ability, I've seen it look fine so far, and so I think he's looking pretty good. What would I say is our least deep position? This is an interesting question because really a lot of our positions are deep, right? When you have quarterback, a lot of people question whether Nate Sudfeld or not would be good or not. But as I said earlier, he's been looking fine Been the better quarterback of the two by far in practice, and he's been looking like a competent backup, maybe as opposed to years past so far. But who our least deep position at the moment, just based on how I'm looking at it, I'd say nickelback, right? Because if it's Womack, that's good, but it's Womack and Denard. Quantrez Knight is getting reps there, but I don't think Quantrez Knight right now factors into the 49ers 22 plans. It's been Denard really getting all the first team reps. And at least for me, that's a little cause for concern. The nickelback is going to be a very important position this year because with the two outside corners being locked down, I think the nickelback is going to be targeted a lot. And that's what happened a little bit today. Ayuk had a very good catch on Denard today with the first team. I think that is something to watch. There are essentially two players competing for the position as of now. Maybe more get factored in, maybe when Verrett is healthy and all that. But that's one of our least deep positions. But really, it's a testament because our cornerback room is very deep. Safety room is pretty deep. The linebackers are very deep. Tight ends are deep. You've got a lot of different names out there that are just floating around. Wide receiver is deep. Running back is pretty deep. And the defensive line obviously is very deep. So it is a tough question. I'd say nickelback as of now, just based on the talent there and the number of names that are competing there. But yeah, there's a lot of good players, which makes cut down a lot harder this year. Pinor asks, do you see the team accepting the O-line as is going forward, or should we expect a trade? I think the 49ers will keep this offensive line. Again, one thing that I need to preface again, Trent Williams did not play. Mike McGlinchey did not play in scrimmage drills. So remember, on the outside, it's Jalen Moore, the guy who's been practicing all year at guard and now is playing at right tackle for a little bit. And then on the left side, it's Colton McKivitz, a guy who's played a little bit of guard as well. So remember, it's the two backups at the tackle position with the first team going against guys like Nick Bosa, going against guys like Armstead, going against guys like Drake Jackson, and all the first team guys, right? And Omenahue. So I think the 49ers offensive line is going to be a little better than we anticipate right now, just because I think with more continuity and more time with this team is going to, I think the offensive line will mesh well. I don't personally expect a trade or a signing right now, but I wouldn't be opposed to it, right? There's still some good offensive linemen on the free agent market. Some ones will definitely be on the block. Maybe even a potential Jimmy Garoppolo trade. We'll see. But I think the offensive line is very, very interesting right now. We'll see how they fare against this defensive line in camp. But iron sharpens iron. This is the best defensive line that you can go against, really, in training camp. So that to me is why I think the offensive line will end up being fine. But right now, it is a little questionable. We'll see how they go as training camp continues. All right. Continuing. The Jordan Mason hype is real. I think the Jordan Mason hype is real. I honestly think he's got a very fair shot to make this roster. I know the coaches like him. We'll see how that continues. CJ Gray asked, what about Thomas? I heard he was getting burnt yesterday. 49ers are using Thomas very interestingly. When they play him at cornerback, he's playing soft coverage. He's playing 5-10 yards off the ball. Maybe not 10, but 5-7 yards off the ball. I know he was in coverage during Ayuk's 30-yard catch today where he caught it over George Odom. But Thomas is backpedaling with giving the guys 5-7 yards of room in the short and intermediate part of the field so they can make cuts in and they can get away. But I don't know how they continue to use Thomas. Do they maybe allow him to be a press man corner or what? But Thomas, he's looked fine. Not the best, not the worst. I'll say that. How's Tarvarius Moore? I haven't actually seen him playing forever. Moore is fine. He's been playing with the second team safeties. He played a little bit of single high today. He was one of the guys who played just a little bit of single high. He's been playing with George Odom today. Not him. Odom's played single high. He was actually a little more in the box today, which was interesting given his speed. You sometimes saw him as a third linebacker today. But Moore is fine. He's been playing as the second team safety. As of now, he's probably projected as one of the four safeties to make it. We'll see if somebody eclipses him. But he seems to finally getting back in the groove of football after his injury. Interesting question. How's Keaton Sutherland been looking so far? Sutherland's all right. Nothing too much, right? The competition at center is without Sutherland. It is Brendel or it is Brunskill. Both of those guys are the guys getting first team reps. So Sutherland is getting pushed behind the depth chart a little bit because it's those two guys kind of rotating a lot. Sutherland doesn't necessarily get a lot of run because he doesn't play outside of center. But he's been all right, I guess. I mean, I'm not going to put too much weight into a second or third string center going against this defensive line. What running backs make the team? And here I think is where I'm going to stop and talk about running backs. The guy that doesn't look that doesn't look good right now in the running back room is Jeff Wilson Jr. I don't think he's that quick anymore. At least in some of the rushes that I saw today, he didn't seem that quick. And so I'm waiting to see, is he going to be a little more physical? Because he struggled a little bit in my opinion today. The running game struggled overall a little bit in my opinion today. Uh, Obviously, again, grain of salt because of the offensive line, no pads and all that. But I think that Jeff Wilson Jr. will not make this team. The question is whether Hasty will make this team or not. Hasty did have a catch or two today. He's looking a little better, but again, he's a little bit of a smaller running back to the 49ers have concerns there. If he can sustain like durability over the full game, full course of the season. And I personally would prefer if a guy like Jordan Mason does make it over Hasty, just given the build of the running backs and the physicality that the 49ers likely want to play the position with, given their durability concerns over the past couple of years. All right, we got a question on Nick Zakel. Any thoughts on Nick Zakel? He's supposed to be smart and very athletic. Zakel has been playing with the second team offensive line. Remember, Burford is now the starter at right guard so far, with Daniel Brunskill being pretty much a center, being the second team center. Zakel has been getting run. I think I saw him get run on the left side, but he's been primarily playing on the right side. I think at right guard. He was all right. He did give up a couple of pressures today, but then again, it's against a pretty good defensive line without pads. Gave up a couple of pressures, but really it was the tackles that were a little more worrying today than the interior guys. But real quick, speaking on offensive linemen, by far the worst offensive lineman that I saw today was Justin Skule. He false started. He didn't have a really a great meshing with the offensive line, and he gave up a couple of pressures. I don't think Justin Skule makes this roster. Just two practices in again, but I don't think Justin Skule makes this roster. He's the third team right tackle right now. It's McGlinchey, it's Jalen Moore, and then it's Justin Skule. He was the first team guy in OTAs and minicamp, potentially giving him some reason to potentially make this roster. Right now, I don't think Justin Skule makes this roster. 49ers, in my opinion, have 10 offensive linemen that could potentially make the roster, Skule being one of them. I think they only carry 8, and I don't think Skule is one of the 8 overall. Who has been playing nickel? 49er mind asks. Darquise Denard is your starter. Then it's Sam Womack, second team. Quantrez Knight, third team. What was Anthony Lynn doing today? This is actually a good question. I didn't necessarily see Anthony Lynn as much, but I know he's working with the running backs. He's one of the coaches working with the running backs during running back drills. Ooh, Quan Alexander to the Jets. That's a very, very interesting one. Quan Alexander, obviously the linebacker, going back to play with Robert Saleh, who made him a good linebacker over here with the 49ers. So nice signing there. Hopefully Quan Alexander gets his career back on track. I see messages when he puts them. I don't see him. Ooh, I do not know why this issue is happening. That's a little unfortunate. My bad, guys. If you guys don't see your messages, I see all of them, and I'm just going one by one. Ronnie Montoya here asks, how is Javon Kinlaw looking? Javon Kinlaw is looking pretty good. He also is one of the guys who doesn't play during scrimmages. He's only playing during positional drills, but he looked good yesterday. Looked quick. I know he beat Nick Bosa in a one-on-one in one of those drills that defensive linemen have. He's looking like his former self. The quick explosiveness. It's only does the durability come through, and when pass rushing drills come on with pads, how does Javon Kinlaw look? Can he keep up with the offensive linemen, especially with this offensive line group, or will he struggle a little bit as a pass rusher, limiting his overall potential? Tampa Bay lost their center. I bet they're pursuing J.C. Treader. I heard that Ryan Jensen went down. I don't know the injury. I didn't see yet. But if he's gone for the year, J.C. Treader might be their guy because guess what? Tom Brady doesn't necessarily need the connection with the setter as much as the 49ers quarterback Trey Lance does. J.C. Treader is a good center, just he doesn't practice, and that's detrimental. That's why I didn't necessarily think he was realistic for the 49ers. 49ers need a guy to have a good center quarterback relationship. That's why Jake Brendel might end up winning the job right now because of that relationship. But that's interesting news about Tampa Bay. Jalen Moore needs to be playing guard. He hasn't looked good at right tackle. I agree. It's not that he hasn't looked like a wait, obviously, before further confirmation, but Jalen Moore hasn't necessarily been the strong spot for the 49ers on the offensive line. He does need to be playing guard more. I think he's more comfortable there, or at least he thinks he's more suited there. He was the first team guy in OTAs and in minicamp. Maybe the 49ers don't think that highly of him because they haven't played him at guard yet after that time period. But he hasn't looked great at right tackle. Right now, though, I don't know if a change will happen until Mike McGlinchey can come back and practice a lot more because Moore is the first team right tackle right now with McGlinchey not playing in McGlinchey plays in the positional drills and all the early drills, but McGlinchey does not play during scrimmages. If School doesn't make it, Miami will pick him up. Mike McDaniel likes him. That's fine. If School doesn't make it, it's because there's a ton of depth on this roster. I don't think the 49ers will sweat it too much, but we'll see. He just hasn't looked that good so far in camp. I figured out the message issues. Ooh, interesting. I'll figure this out a little later. But there we go. That is all the questions so far. I think I covered everything. Michael Gallup won't be ready for week 1. That's another interesting part. But guys, thank you all so much for tuning in. This was a little longer stream than yesterday, but I enjoyed it all. Thank you guys. I will be back tomorrow, or not tomorrow. I think there isn't practice tomorrow, but there is practice on Saturday. So I will be back on Saturday, I believe, breaking it down. But thank you guys all so much for watching. There's one more question that I'll get to before I tune off for today. But be sure to subscribe. Be sure to hit the like button. And be sure to just stay tuned because a lot of this content is coming out sooner than later. Ronnie Montoya asks, who is a sleeper from the rookies? So if we're talking about the rookies, sleeper pick is interesting. I think it's Burford. Burford, obviously a 4th-round pick. He is the starter right now at guard. A lot of people didn't expect this. I think he's a sleeper because the 49ers love his athleticism. That is something interesting about Burford. But Drake Jackson and Burford right now are the 2 rookies that are popping out. TDP as well. The top 3 picks for the 49ers. I think that they have the potential to maybe play some nice roles for the 49ers in 2022. Maybe Sam Womack as well if he ends up winning that cornerback, that nickelback kind of competition. But guys, thank you all so much. I will be back on Saturday. We'll probably be back tomorrow. But thank you guys, and I will see you guys next time.